Welcome back. Welcome back to Detroit is Different. And here, it's getting cold. But just because it's getting cold, that doesn't mean that you got to miss out on finding out more about the culture of Detroit and people pouring into the culture of Detroit, right? So, the young lady here today is somebody that I met in passing a couple of different times. And when I say in passing a couple of times, the first time I saw her, she was really putting in work. When I say putting in work, she was carrying boxes like probably like larger than her. And I was like, do you need some help? She was like, no, I got this. These boxes had computers. They had learning materials. They had, I don't know, probably like some play stuff because like this was like the middle of the summertime. And I was thinking to myself, this is hot. It was pressed in my mind. I'm like, who is dedicated to do all of this back and forth, probably running a program where I'm sure it's a lot of other people, but at the end of the day, this is the point person on it, right? And then I hear her name come up in something else. And then in passing, closing out 2024, Mr. Orlando Bailey was like, hey, you need to get her on Detroit is Different. And I was like, yeah, I do need to get her on Detroit is Different. Let's make it happen. So please meet Maria Franklin. How are you today?
Hello, I am well. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Definitely, definitely. So we know definitely the core strength and the arm strength is strong because you was carrying them boxes and all of that good
Yeah.
stuff.
Oh, yeah, that's mama strength.
Mama strength.
Yes, 3 times.
Ah,
Carrying those car seats.
see, there you go.
Like,
I know. It's like, see,
build that endurance, then you carry the big ones because,
see,
it's
you about
heavy.
to start a whole workout video. It's like, get over, move over, Billy Blanks and Jane Fonda.
That's right.
You got the Franklin workout. Mama strength. I like it already. So with that being said, you have a program where you definitely are connecting with little ones. I always say little homies or young people and giving them a gateway to a lot of different things towards leadership, life leaders. I definitely want to touch on life leaders, but before we go there, we always got to start these stories. How we start in Detroit is different. Your origin to Detroit. How many generations deep are you and your family to the city?
Let's see. We have my mom, my grandmother, and my great-grandparents
Wow.
definitely lived here. They came here from the South, I'm sure. Yeah.
Okay. So you're at least 3 generations deep. Okay. All right. So that's
I will
some
be the 4th generation, and then my kids will be the
mm.
5th. So there's 5 generations here.
So that's like some knee deep Detroitism right now going on with you.
Mhm.
So let's start a little with the South. Where from the South? Or do you even know?
I don't know.
Okay.
Huh. Yeah. No. Don't even get me
Get you
Don't get me
pontificating on that.
wrong.
So let's go back to like, what do you remember from grandparents or great grandparents? What neighborhood did they stay?
What do I remember from them? I don't know. They were in Detroit, I know. They passed when I was young.
Mm.
So I don't remember a whole lot of where they actually lived. They were in a high rise. I remember
Mhm.
that. Um, yeah, I don't know where Mabel and Napoleon. They
Where they was at. All right.
Yeah.
So then let's move forward then
Mhm.
to what neighborhood do you remember growing up most?
So I bounced around a lot. So my dad was in the Army.
Hmm.
I was born in Detroit,
Mhm.
Hutzel Hospital.
Okay.
Okay. We moved when I was a baby, lived in California and Kansas for a number of years. Um, Came back when I was 12. My dad was discharged from the
Mm.
Army. And from there, I lived off of Linwood for a little bit.
We love Linwood.
Yeah, lived off of Tireman and Joy Road, off of Greenfield. Trying to think where else. 7 Mile and Southfield Freeway. Like I've been kind of
All over the west side.
The west side, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, all
So
over.
you had a little bit of taste of like you said like like a central neighborhood, a McKenzie neighborhood, a Mumford neighborhood, a Cody neighborhood.
Yep.
You were just
Ford, yep.
okay. So just like a taste of the
Yeah,
west
actually,
side.
yeah, I lived in Redford in my adult years for about 10 years. And now I am in Rosedale Park,
Okay.
you know.
All right. So it's like you went through the whole scope of almost every west side school I can remember almost.
Mhm.
And you also said military background. What was it like being a military kid bouncing around there?
Um, it was cool. I mean, I think it gave me a lot of perspective that is valuable, that I realized looking back on it is valuable. Because I saw more than just what was in my neighborhood.
Mhm,
I saw more than what was in Detroit. And, I got exposure to different types of schools, or school districts and
mhm,
ways of doing things. In California, it was a lot more hands-on, learning by doing stuff. And when I came back to Detroit, it was a lot more book work and read this chapter and answer these questions type of stuff. But all in all, it was always kind of reinventing. Didn't have any real consistent childhood friends because we would move
mhm.
so much. You move, you gotta make new friends, start all over again. So, it was just me and my sister at the time. I have 4 sisters now, but for a while, it was just me and my sister that's 2 years younger than me, and, that was, like, my best friend, and we just traveled through the US together.
So now you can talk a little bit about that heavy experience for a lot of parents watching. The new kid. What's it like being a new kid so often when you were a kid?
I was just kind of focused. I didn't have time to be distracted,
Mhm.
and I was kinda social too. So I talked I got 2s instead of 1s in, what do you call it?
Citizenship
Citizenship.
grades.
Yeah,
Yes.
citizenship. I didn't get 3s, I didn't get
Uh,
1s, I was right there in the middle. So
mhm,
I would talk a little bit, but I was very much focused on my classwork because I
mhm,
didn't know anybody well enough to really get in no real trouble.
mhm,
So, um at one point, I remember when I was at where was I at? Taft.
mhm,
I remember, being publicly embarrassed and shamed for
mm,
being, quote, unquote, "a teacher's pet." I did really well on a test or something like that. I was in
mhm,
gym. Teacher sat We were sitting all down on the gym floor, and the teacher's like, "Maria did da 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 da," and she's like, "Model student," and then,
mhm.
all the students was like, "Teacher's pet," and I'm like, "Oh, no, like, why did you put me
Oh,
on blast like that? Like, I'm just here," as my daughter would say when back in the day, "bothering my own business."
hilarious.
I don't want no smoke.
Mhm.
But it was what it was. It was just, you learn to adapt. I was very comfortable with change, and I think that has proved as a benefit for me as an adult when life is constantly changing.
Mhm.
I can kind of just roll with the change kind of, pretty easily, but I also have a real appreciation for stability, consistency, and being kind of grounded because of that too.
Okay. And then also, I'm guessing growing up in a military household, we always think a military parent is like really strict and stern and wake up at this time. Was that the feel there, or was it still more like, you know?
Um, my dad would work a lot. I don't remember him being very strict. He was
Okay.
fun. I mean,
Oh,
he would
okay.
come and he would bring the candy, and my mom would be like, "Why you bringing all this candy?" He would just do stuff like that. But he did teach us how to shine his shoes,
Mm.
he showed us how he would do his dress
Mhm.
greens and how it need to be ironed, like pressed and all neat and everything. So I did see that.
Mhm.
How to roll up the little sleeping bags and stuff like that. I remember those things, but it didn't feel extremely strict. I don't
So
know.
it wasn't one of those households where it's like, look, by 7 a.m., you waking up, even on a Saturday.
I don't remember being made to wake up very early.
Okay.
Mm-mm.
All right. All right. Okay. Okay. All right. So now I guess now let's shift into your mom and her personality because it sounds like if your dad was working a whole lot, that definitely puts a relationship between you being the oldest and then 2 years younger. That's like, yeah, I could see that friendship bond, but still, you and your mom probably have a bond that's like really close coming up. What was that like?
So my mom was very loving. She was a homemaker. She cooked, she cleaned, she did laundry. She um was big on love and hugs and all that kind of thing. She had her little, imperfections as well.
Mm,
My mom and dad. So growing up, she used to teach us. She used to read the Bible all the time and
Mm,
teach us about, scripture and have us write scriptures, and I remember doing stuff like that, and then it was just I don't know, my mom is we we have a decent relationship, but it's one of those things where I think when my dad passed away when I was 14. I
mm,
think I was 14 or
mm,
16 or somewhere 16. I was 16, and, and they separated too.
hmm.
They separated when I was about 12.
So, like, soon
So when
after.
that happened, it
Mhm,
kinda shifted the dynamic a little bit, and
mhm,
it was one of those situations where you're starting to take on more, than most kids probably would.
mhm,
So it was a maturing that occurred, with me and my sister that was a couple years younger than me, and, kind of a hustle too, you know? It was one of those things where, alright, you want whatever you want, you're gonna go out and get it, or you gonna
mm.
go without, and so we always had the attitude and, the what do you call it? Kind of
The drive.
wiring,
Mhm.
to just go out and get it versus waiting and hoping
So,
something to happen.
and
Yeah.
then also, this has come up before, grief itself, but especially like a child losing a parent while at any age losing a parent is tough. But definitely when you're young and just understanding what that is. So I can only imagine that impact. And then soon after already a separation. So it's like a double blow of like, oh man, your world's changing like right before you, which I'm sure also kind of goes back to the adapting of changing. But let's talk a little bit about grief because as a young person processing that, did was it and it's a lifelong journey. How did you navigate that space, especially being a big sister? Because I'm guessing some of that was also navigating with your kid sister.
It was really interesting because my dad I remember calling him. Of course, he's living where he is, I'm with my mom, me and my
Mm,
sister, and, calling and not getting an answer, and then, um having a dream that he passed away that
mm,
felt so real that I woke up basically in tears,
mm,
and then getting a call, like, a day later that he actually died, and then learning that, his phone was broken because his girlfriend's, grandbaby dropped it into a cup of water.
mm,
So it was kind of a weird space. It was a situation where didn't really have money to do the kind of burial that you would
mhm,
traditionally see. So that was kind of a awakening, kinda eye-opening thing, and, it was just like a coming to grips with, mortality in a
mhm,
sense, I guess, and spirituality also. I just remember, finally going to see him and in the morgue
mm,
and, touching his
mm,
body, right?
mm,
And it was, like, cold, it was hard, it was, like, no life in it, and that's when I realized, "Okay, this is just the shell," right? And so I learned that at 16, that the spirit, is what brings the body alive, and, I don't know, I guess it just kinda pushed me into a more of a spiritual place and kind of reaffirming that piece of my life and experience. And then it was like, okay, just gotta do what you gotta do out here,
and stay focused.
make stuff happen.
So I'm
Yeah.
guessing you were one of those kids that had a lot of I had a lot of those jobs too. Like you had like a lot of kid jobs, I'm guessing, the whole time through
I
working.
think, yeah, I started working when I was 14
Mhm.
over in Northwestern High School.
Ah, for
I was a
real?
police
Shout out
cadet,
Colts.
yellow shirts.
Oh, the summer police cadets. Wait, let me break that down a little bit. Okay. So, for all of the
Yes,
people watching across the nation that may not
yes.
know, Detroit has a program that every summer it's multiple jobs that are given and provided with money from the city. This is kind of part of community block grants, I believe, but don't necessarily stump me on that one. But in this, one of the largest programs that hires a lot of youth is the police cadets. And as you just said the yellow shirts and the yellow hats. So the police cadets have different programs, and those police cadets serve throughout community. Northwestern, my alma mater, shout out Mighty Coats, welcomed a lot of police cadets because Northwestern is just such a large school and there's so many things inside the institution. So 14-year-old police cadet, you're interacting with kids across the city then.
Mhm.
What was that like? What do you remember?
I just remember it being kind of an easy job.
Mhm.
It was a way to earn money. I was with it. I'm like, yep, I'm got me a cell phone now. I'm go buy me some little Parasuco jeans.
I love it.
Uh,
I
you
love
know,
it.
over at Northland.
Okay.
Say la vie, you know.
Hey, shout out Northland, the another uplifting of Northland and another
Yes.
store. Say la vie. Oh
Okay.
man.
Yep. So, it was cool. It was like empowering and
Mhm.
it was addictive. I think I never stopped working after that because I remember one time before my dad passed, I asked him for a homecoming ticket.
Mm.
And he was doing little odd jobs after he got out of the
Out of the service.
but
Mhm.
he wasn't making a lot of money. My mom, I don't know what my mom was doing.
Mhm. Yeah. But they was like, you gonna have to get your own homecoming ticket. You gotta get your own homecoming ticket,
That's
basically.
right. And so I was like, okay, well, I'm about to get out here and get a job then and work.
Okay.
And I went to homecoming. I paid for my own ticket. And
Okay.
so
Where did you end up? Where else did you work at younger age?
I worked at Lear Corporation. It was like
Like an internship type thing or something.
no, it wasn't even internship. It was like a plant kind of. It was assembly line type of situation where
For real?
yep, it was put in plastic parts. There's a metal adhesive
Mhm.
and you smooth it onto a plastic part. And it was for a whirlpool. I believe they used this little thin part.
Mhm.
It contributed to like
Something
creating
in the whirlpool.
uh dryer, right? For washer and dryer.
Okay.
And I remember smoothing it out and getting little micro cuts on my fingers from it. Like you have to put little band-aids on your fingers because it created micro cuts and it was so repetitive and it was like
So you had like a job.
I was like, but it was good money though.
Yeah,
I
I
was
was
like,
gonna say,
okay.
you
But it
weren't
was
working at Taco
also
Bell like me in high school.
it was my friend. My friend's mom worked there.
Uh-huh.
And so we all started working there because whatever,
Okay.
we was I guess you had to be 16 or whatever age. And
Mhm.
we all went and worked there. But I remember being like, okay, this is cool. I'm making money, but I don't want to do this for the rest of my life because I'm tired of doing the same thing over and over. And I don't want these micro cuts. But it built so much character, you
Okay.
know? And then I worked for Gordon's Food Service
Okay.
as a cashier.
GFS.
Yep, GFS.
Okay. Which one?
Over on Telegraph and 10 Mile.
Oh man.
Yep, I got a job. I was working with my boyfriend at the time. He was working there, got me a job.
Cashier.
Yeah.
Cashier, that's front line. I've been a
Yeah.
cashier before. Cashier working is
Cashier, I did some
interesting.
stocking because I didn't want to always be. I'm like, what else can I do? I just want to do like, don't put me in this one spot. I need to break up the monotony of this thing.
So for everyone that's not been a cashier, okay, cashiering is weird because it can be boring as ever. Then it can get way too much. So it's like a weird mix of like you want to have the right amount of people be in line. And then also human beings are interesting. So you're gonna get like I was cashier, people were still writing checks and stuff, and you got check ID, and this person with returning stuff, and it's like, oh, and then you just on your feet interacting, talking to people. You know, it was always worried about secret shoppers, but okay.
Yep, secret shoppers. We had that. That was yeah.
Yep.
I also worked at what was it? The hotel, the Westin Hotel. I was a hostess for a little bit, and then
Southfield or downtown?
Southfield.
Okay.
I don't know. Yeah, I guess Westin was downtown then, but hostess. I was killing that. Waitress, did terrible.
Hilarious.
Terrible. The worst waitress ever. Like
what were the skill sets that you think made your waitress experience where somebody this was pre-Yelp, I'm guessing?
I don't know, maybe, but I just know if I had one table, golden.
Hilarious. Yes. Already, I already see where you're going.
Like, I was attentive. I was
Mhm.
like, it was perfect, but then when I get a bunch of tables, I'm like, I
You
done
get two,
forgot
it's
somebody's
like, oh,
stuff, they mad at me, I'm like, carrying this tray, all this food, I'm like, "Just put me back at the front, I'm gonna
hilarious.
greet the people, I'm better over here."
Okay. So you've definitely pounded the pavement in different workforces.
Yes.
So, all right. So from there, staying with school, because I know a little bit of your story.
Mhm.
We didn't even get what high school did you go to?
I graduated from Cass Tech, I spent
Mhm.
a little bit of time at McKenzie High School as well.
Mhm.
That was my neighborhood high school.
What did you like about CT? There's so many people that went to CT.
What did I like about CT? I mean, it was a school, honestly,
Mhm.
what is it? I was in science and arts, that was good exposure. I had some really great teachers, what do you call it? Honors English, Rita Citron,
Mm.
she was a Jewish woman who taught us did a deep dive into the Holocaust and,
Mm.
just learning how to write, and all the science and stuff kinda pushed me into the realm of nutrition and dietetics, which is what I started off with, originally with my undergrad degree. And, I mean, it was fun. I didn't do a whole lot. I pretty much
It
went to
sounds like you were
school.
working,
I went to school and
and
I
then
got
you
on the
went to work.
bus and I went back home,
It sounds like you went to work really
you
though, because
know?
you had them jobs. You had to go to
I
school
worked
to
too.
work.
Definitely worked, and I was at work, I was at school, I was at home.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So after high school,
Mhm.
what college?
Went to Wayne State.
Okay. Went to Wayne State, and you said for nutrition,
Mhm.
and you said that part of the science. What drew you into that form of science?
I think it was a combination of things because I was originally interested in, physical therapy.
Mm.
And I did a little interning, found out that it was so boring, I didn't wanna do it. I guess I would say I shoulda stuck to that, but no, I'm good where I am today.
Yeah.
But, I ended up I think part of it was because my mom, like, she was always into health and nutrition, like, lecturing us about not eating so much sugar and
Mm.
that kinda thing. The other part was my dad passed away
Mm.
of a heart attack when he
Wow.
was 40, right? I was 16, he was 40 years old, and I was just observing, just kinda thinking, right?
Mhm.
I got a shirt that's being made that's gonna say, "I be thinking,"
Mhm. I
'cause
like it.
'cause I'm
Be
always
thinking.
thinking, and
There
I
you go.
always been this way. And, so I was looking around at my community, I was thinking about my dad, I'm like, "What could have caused this?" Right? Because 40 is young. And, I'm like, "Okay, lifestyle is a big part of that," health, what are you eating? My dad used to smoke
Mhm.
cigarettes and drink a lot of beer. That's a lifestyle choice that contributes to heart disease, right? And then stress.
Mm.
I looked around in my community and in the grocery stores and my friends, and I noticed that obesity was a thing. Disease was prevalent in my community. The grocery stores sold a lot of junk. Right. The more I learned as I took a nutrition class just for fun, and I read the book. I enjoyed reading the book, and so I read it. It was only the first book I had really read in college. I was skating by. I don't know what I was doing in college, but I actually read that book,
Mm.
and I wanted to read it, and so that's how I ended up getting into nutrition. I talked to some young women who were in the dietetics program. That's how I learned about the dietetic profession, and then I ended up applying for that, got in, and the rest was history from there.
So that space, and I don't know what era we're talking. Is this early 2000s, 2010s? What era is this? Because that also frames a little bit of like how the community's even looking at that.
Yep, so that would have been right around 2003,
Okay.
2004.
All right. So
Yep.
like we're thinking like mid first 2000s. So that's still an era where definitely the whole concept vegetarian was looked at like you were an alien, but being a
Mhm.
vegan was like, what are you talking about? You can't eat eggs? So So
Mhm.
it's not what it is today.
Right.
And many people that took a lot of those nutrition journeys, as I knew people in that space and that era, it was a community within itself.
Mhm.
But also like studying it, um, what were some of the connections being made with what you were learning and building in like being in this community that at the time was not as vast as what it is now?
Um, so you said connections that were being made in
Mhm.
terms of
As far as the people, the places, the stores, like
what was I observing in
yeah, and
real life?
how did you connect? Because for me, the one place I know, and it's been around for so long, is in Ferndale, the Natural Patch. That's like the one place that I remember. But even
Mhm.
other iterations, and shout out Dr. Jesse Brown and all he's been doing for forever with the Holistic Center. But that was around then. But what were some of those connections that you made to create a community? Because it just wasn't as prevalent as, I mean, a steakhouse.
Yeah, so I think I there was 2 things. So I was drawing I was creating establishing connections in my mind,
Hmm.
right? From looking at the comparison of like a was it Plum Market
Hmm.
versus um what is that?
Like a
Spartan
Spartan
or something
store.
like that,
Yeah.
that was on the corner or, the little
Mhm.
family grocery store that was on the corner, and I just, noticed and not only the grocery store, but the gas station. So you got the corner of, what was it, Tireman and Joy Road or something like that, and it's like grocery store, gas station, hamburger joint, right? And then, grocery store is selling, like, first thing you see is ramen noodles, sugary cereals, cigarettes, it's all this kinda junk food, and then you go across the street and same thing at the gas station. It's like candies, juices, and I'm learning about how you should be drinking 100% juice if you drink juice at all.
Mhm.
And I'm going into the gas station and I'm looking and I'm like, okay, 95% of these drinks are 90% sugar. Right? And so it's like I just realized it's such a small subset of the food offerings that actually fit into a healthy lifestyle in the neighborhood where I grew up.
Mm.
And then across the street, you got the hamburger joint and it's like bacon cheeseburgers, chili cheese fries. And I love this stuff. We went to the store, the gas station got Porter juices, now and laters, caramel apple suckers and chips, right? That was like our thing, and pizza,
Mhm.
up the street by our school, and, all of this stuff. I'm like, "All this stuff is killing us."
Mm.
And then you go over to the Plum Market, and first thing you see is flowers and the most pristine vegetables that you could ever want, or ask for, and when I was once I graduated okay, so first of all, I was in a, profession with mostly white women. I was the only person of color in my class, and that was a whole thing in and of itself, but, um, one of my classmates introduced me to eating fresh red peppers as a snack. She was a dental hygienist going into nutrition and dietetics, and this was like a thing that she did, and I thought it was peculiar because I didn't eat those kind of snacks growing up. None of my friends did. So I'm getting kind of acclimated to a new way of eating, a new way of thinking, and being. And then once I actually got out of the program, graduated, and I'm working in the field. I was working for Wayne State
Hmm.
and I was contracted to teach nutrition in high schools throughout the city of Detroit. I was in 13 high schools.
What high schools?
I was in Cass, King, Renaissance for a period, like a
Mhm.
couple years, Western,
Mm.
Southwestern when it was open, Osborne,
The
Finney,
Bourne
now East English Village,
and Finney, them some I know.
EIA,
Mm.
ESA,
Okay.
Detroit, what was it? The Catherine Ferguson School, I was in there,
Mhm.
that's the one they used to have for pregnant, teens.
Mhm.
So I was all over, east side, west side, 21 classrooms a week, 13 schools, before the emergency manager came and then chopped it down to 7 from there, but still 21 classrooms.
So, okay. I'm very interested in this
Okay.
because this also is like a preface for a lot of the work you do now,
It is, yes.
interacting with young people. But
Mhm.
especially, like I said, shout out to the Born. Like when I went to King for that short stint, I was hanging around all the people from King Homes and people that eventually graduated or
Mhm.
were enrolled at Osborne Infinity. you know,
Mhm.
you
Mhm.
know. So so definitely know the culture.
Mhm.
And I can only imagine what was it like a nutrition class, Osborne, 2000s era.
It
What was
was
that feel?
it was good. It was great actually.
How did the students take to it? What were like the lessons and how did you build your rapport of presenting this information to the students?
At first I started just going in with the lesson, then I started thinking, because I be thinking, and I was like, "I need to connect with them, like, why would they even care? Like, how
Mm,
does this relate to them personally?" And so I started to ask them questions like, "Who has a family member with high blood pressure?" Everybody
mm,
hand go up. "Who knows somebody with diabetes?" Everybody hand go up. "Who knows somebody who had heart disease or a heart attack?" So many hands are going up, and so it's like, okay, these ailments are the result of consistent daily actions over years. And so what we choose to eat and put into our bodies every day over a period of time is what's going to manifest into our health when we get older. And so for yourself, if you want to have a healthy life and a good quality of life later, now's the time to start. For your family, if for your parents, for your grandparents, if you know they can use this information, so get it for them, right? And so that helped them to connect to it.
mhm.
And then the kids were that's where I learned about the value of a good teacher, one that understands kids, one that can relate to them. And you can be in a school that's quote unquote challenging school, but with the teacher that cares and understands kids, where those kids connect and respect that teacher, and they're like perfect angels. And then you can have that same exact class, which did happen. One of the teachers passed away. He was like
Mhm.
a mentor, he was a pastor, he was like a father to these kids, and I never had a problem. Went in, did the lesson, in, out, and it was good. They switched, when he left, and actually some teachers, had to leave, they took buyouts or whatever during emergency manager, and they brought in less experienced, people from different communities that didn't understand the kids, and that's where I saw that I had a challenge getting through a lesson because I went, I don't know, 8, 9 years not ever having a problem delivering a lesson, and then, you have that switch of leadership in the classroom, and for the first time, I'm not able to get through a lesson, you know?
It's interesting you uplift that when I think about so much of the work and really the lessons I learned from being on the outside of school, because that's actually what happens most with this work in media. Like sometimes people think like, oh man, you probably meet all these celebrities and stuff. You probably meet women. You probably meet this. What I often get is people saying, hey, can you come to this school and talk to us, to some
Mhm.
kids?
Mhm.
Or can you mentor my son? Like that
Mhm.
is probably the largest request I get most often. I have a request to go to a school. It's a school for students with autism that I'm gonna go to sometime later this month, I assume.
Mhm.
But that is the largest request.
Mhm.
And I mastered, I think when I was younger, I was more in pace with the patience that it took and that presence of mind. But so much of what you say, it is who that teacher is.
Mhm.
Even from some of my teachers at Northwestern, because Northwestern, as you say, challenging. I like that term. Yes, it was some challenges, but still, some of those challenges don't touch the door. And then even at a quote unquote good school, it's that same thing. If the connection's not there with who the teacher is, none of it really doesn't matter. So you recognizing that, and then also I'm assuming like most of the students looked at you like you supposed to be in class with us, you know,
A lot of times they did,
because
and,
it's like you look like you could. I could if I saw you in the hall right now, I'd be like, where your pass at?
Yeah, I would get that a lot from the kids, from the administrators.
Yeah. It's like, "Nah, I'm
I'm like, I'm grown.
yes. Yes, I am grown."
I'm grown, grown.
Yep.
But that is true. It's very important. Mentorship is important. It's important to, show up for young people. They need to hear you and they need to see you. They need to have people that care about them because they can feel that, right?
So, and you also uplift something that still I don't think is crystallized the way it needs to be crystallized of what happened with emergency management and really the keep the vote no takeover movement that my parents, Jen and Greg Fraser, were big in, and Helen Moore. I'll be interviewing Helen Moore soon too. Actually, these probably will play off of each other. That'll be interesting. And just a lot of the relationship between resources from a state in a predominantly black city and how this tug of war exists. The sad reality of Detroit Public Schools right now, Detroit Public School Community District, is students get caught in the fray of this.
Mhm.
And being black, it's very bothersome. Alumni president of Northwestern for maybe about 8 years. And the relationship of so many people that have ideas of what's happening in schools versus really walking inside of a school and understanding some of the landscape of it and how much it changes every day is tough. So I look at some of the work you're doing, the work that Teen Hype is doing, and just so many other organizations, and know that, like, even with everything being poured in, the root of a lot of that acting out that student is given is the cry for attention.
Mhm.
And that cry for attention is the attention is needed at home, but then it reflects as this. I'm fresh off a State of Black Detroit, so I can say this, it's in my mind. Some of the attention that's needed for the parents,
Mhm.
for the grandparents,
Mhm.
the attention that's needed for the community.
Yeah.
As I often tell people when they say schools are crazy, I'm like, imagine what it would be like if you gathered 35 adults and kept them in a place for 8 hours, all in the same footprint of a location.
Mhm.
You think that there's some fights and crazy stuff happening now. I mean, you think it's a shootout now. I think
Mhm.
probably every other day, because our communities need that attention, need that care,
Restoration.
and poured in.
Mhm.
So you're providing something that's pouring in and it's hitting you.
Mhm.
And
And I'll also say that, and this kinda ties in to, I mean, you were saying that my experience working with the kids tied into what I do now.
mhm,
I did, do that work for so long, and I started to really sit back and look and say, "It's really nice that I'm pouring, that I'm planting seeds,"
mhm.
right? Teaching young people how to build a quote unquote "perfect plate" that's nutritionally balanced, um, and and they enjoy it. We made it fun. We brought them snacks, to go along with a 15-minute mini lesson. Gave them a little healthy homework challenge that they can go home and apply at home. So it was all kind of learning by doing, and shifting their mindsets. But at the end of the day, um, a lot of the kids that I served in the schools were not looking for, not able to create a perfect plate. They were looking for a plate.
And that's the other elephant in the room.
Mhm.
And even connected to a lot of the programs, you know, my lady always talking about this, like all of the government stuff puts milk in kids and all of this. But it's truth. It's relationships to contracts that are long dating that go far away from communities that place whatever food is inside the school. Like I remember all these Aramark contracting. It's like the same school, same food in a prison is in a school.
Mhm.
That's not just an argument. That's not just a
Mhm.
talking point. That's
Mhm.
a reality. Um, so that now let's kind of fast forward to the work you're doing now and still connecting and understanding more of those needs working with young people,
Mhm.
life leaders.
Yeah.
What's the concept of it? How does it come to life? And now I know so much of the rich experience you have of this. Where is this pivot to say this is something that can be instrumental?
Right. So, first thing is, I realized working. I'm just gonna try to start with schools and transition out, but I realized that, in order for me to be in those schools teaching nutrition, one of the requirements is that at least 50% of the total student population had to qualify for free and reduced lunch. And that was the case when I started, and it was the same case 10 years later when I was, continuing to teach those lessons.
I wanna put a button right where you're at. So, this is a sign. Free and reduced lunch is a that is provided based on the statistics of poverty
Mhm,
that exists throughout a community. And now for a decade plus, it's been a standard that poverty is so pervasive throughout the city of Detroit that every school provides free lunch. So the whole concept, even though I was in lunch line to buy chocolate milk, but the whole concept of like who's buying and who's not buying, before it used to be like a list, you get there and you check that off.
mhm.
Now it's blanketed throughout
And
because
that's because
poverty,
80 so that's what the point I was getting to is that 80% of most schools of the student population were at or below the poverty level and
yes,
qualify for free and reduced lunch. 80%, not just 50. And I said Renaissance because Renaissance was the only school that was just at, like, that 49% of the students qualified, so I couldn't teach in there. I couldn't continue teaching at school.
yeah,
It was still a high percentage, but it was just below the threshold
right there.
of, these kids' parents were a little bit more well-to-do, 50% of them, where they could
And,
get and qualify,
And let's
you know?
let's I'm gonna throw some more stats. It's fresh in my mind from State of Black Detroit. So to understand the pervasive poverty that exists, which I think are conditions connected to a lot of factors, I personally put racism like right in the middle of that. Um, so 12% of Detroiters from like the most recent census data, when you block out 2020 to 2025, make $12,000 a year. The average amount income, and this really kind of goes into like housing. That's why it's fresh in my
Mhm,
mind, like about $35,000 a year. So that's about $16 an hour. So
mhm,
16.50 an hour. So if you're
mhm,
thinking like this, and we're also have so many households that have mothers and children, and that's the household. So it's like multi person households, but it's really one person earning. Also, the households sustained through Social Security or through disability. Like the realities of the functionality that exists in the city in a post-industrial complex of what exists in the city like Detroit. You can read James Boggs or many others for that. It's still looking to find footing. So inside of finding that footing leaves us back to those stressful situations where now I'm starved for attention. But when you are making 16.50 and car insurance is like $900 a month,
see?
I don't have a lot of time to sit and do some homework with you.
Mhm,
And probably the best cry out for attention is to do something very erratic, do something that will be looked at as, I'm going to use your term, challenging behavior. That same thing can carry over into the school environment
mhm, and
as
I mean,
well.
kids do that when left unchecked. They require discipline and structure and systems and constant redirection. That's how kids are produced that are, like, good, constructive, productive citizens. But if you don't have time to do that, to create that structure, it's not, it's bound to happen to any child in that situation.
Mm,
So, the other thing was, from going to all these conferences, I'm learning about all these statistics and learning how, life expectancy is 10 years higher in the suburban areas compared to urban areas where or high poverty areas in general. And so, your zip code essentially is dictating whether you live to be 60 or 70. And again, it all tied together. So you asked me how are things tying together? All of this kind of working together over the course of a decade. And then I ended up going back to school to get my MBA.
mm,
And I I worked with a bunch of PhDs when I was in nutrition, teaching nutrition, people with PhDs, and And I had my little bachelor's degree, and they were like, "When you gonna go back and get your master's?" I was like, "Well, I'm not, because what for?" I had 2 kids at the time, was
Mhm.
married, was working, full time, and I was the first generation college graduate, and I'm like, "I'm fine. Like, I don't need to
Mhm.
what do I need a master's for?" And, but I was like, "I will go back if it's free." Once my daughter is, in kindergarten, right? Because I wanna be there for the formative years of her life and influence her in that way. And, if I don't have to take the GRE,
Mm.
right? And so all those things, it serendipitously
Let's
happened
say, be careful what you
right
ask
when
for. Be careful what you ask for.
so
And it came to life,
all
and
the
it was
things
right there in front of you.
aligned, and I was like, "Okay, well, I guess I'm
I
going
gotta do it.
back to school," and I started the MBA program,
Where at?
at Wayne State.
Back to
They
Wayne.
were paying for it. I
Mm.
was in school I was working there, they
Mhm.
hired me full time, qualified for tuition reimbursement. I was like, "Alright, let's do it." So, when I was in my MBA program, I traveled, did some study abroad, traveling, and went to Brazil,
Hmm.
and,
Where at in Brazil?
so I was in Sao Paulo,
I was saying,
Rio,
okay.
and Manaus, which is where the rainforest is.
Okay.
Sao Paulo is the business district, universities, corporations.
Eh,
Rio is like the beach,
I I
and
I
yeah,
have to stop here because I haven't gone there, and a lot of people are like, "How are you not going there?" And I am so aware of outside of Africa, that's where Black people are.
there's a lot of Black people there.
What was the Black feel when you go there? And then did you learn Portuguese?
Desculpe, eu não falo português.
Ah.
I do not I said, "I'm sorry, I don't speak Portuguese."
Ah.
I
Ah.
knew just enough to get to the bathroom, to pay my tab, and to know and give directions to the
Okay.
taxi, and so,
Okay.
that's what we learned. We learned about 100 words in Portuguese,
I got
and,
you.
had an excellent professor who was a dual citizen, in America and in, Brazil,
Mm.
and, it was a great experience. We had to read books about the country before we went. Learned about, that's where I learned about more about the history of slavery, and
Mm.
how, and about the pipeline of prison and capitalism, and, I learned that slavery started in, South America before it got to America, and there are more people enslaved there than
Yes.
there were here, because it ended there, and it ended there later. It started there earlier, ended later than when it was "abolished," quote, unquote, here.
Mm.
And so I was expecting to see all of these Black people, and I did see a lot of Black people in, Brazil, but when we went into corporate spaces,
None.
the only time I saw a Black person, excuse me, was when, they were either, doing food service or janitorial service.
Mm.
And so when it came to the decision-making table, the executive table, there was no one there, and I asked my professor, "Where are all," after we left one of the corporate spaces, we were on the bus, I'm like, "Where are all the Black people?" And he was like, "It's still a problem."
Mhm.
So, yeah.
And just the colorism that exists, uh, and I'm speaking to this in colorism because race is more of a social construct of America, more so than many other places. But if we put it in race, th these places throughout the world, hence when a lot of people give those arguments about socialism and things like that, and I'm like, "Well, you look at a lot of these other places, racism is very prevalent, and
Mhm.
they can go along, they'll put them in caste systems meaning like you were born into this or you're in the upper echelon, but the one thing that reigns true of most upper echelon societies is the darker you are, you're probably not a part of it.
Yeah, yeah, and it was like that. They had a lottery for, post-secondary education in Brazil, where the only way you can get in is if you won a lottery,
Mm.
and it was mainly only open to fair-skinned people of color, not darker-skinned people of color. Like, they were pretty isolated from that opportunity, and so, all of that coming together, um, had me thinking, that it's not like, why are we not in more of us in those spaces, in those executive rooms,
Hmm.
and in leadership, making decisions? It's not for lack of ability or interest, but rather lack of,
Opportunity.
exposure, mentorship, training, and actual opportunity to be in those spaces, and so, that's what really started to make me wanna shift, and do more for young people. 'Cause I'm like, "These kids can't build a perfect plate if they're not in a position economically,
Yeah.
to be able to make those better decisions for themselves, those with the purchasing power to make those decisions for themselves." And so I started to, just I'm like, I wanna create executive level exposures
Mm.
for young people of color and any person that's disadvantaged, because I don't think it's, just isolated to people of color. I think that, um, people in our country in general, tend to suffer from poverty, and, racism and colorism is something that's just another dividing tool that caused us to believe that one group is better off than another, which to some degree that is true, right, in terms of,
Access to
access and
resources, because
yeah,
that's really what we're talking. We're
yeah.
talking access to resources. And now I'm gonna give more that classic. It's like, all right, be talking in his interviews more than the guests. But I do have to
I
also
love how you
align
add the context to it. Yeah, for sure.
some of my history. When I was
Yeah.
truck driving, I truck drove for Dairy Foods Fresh. And well, Dairy Fresh Foods, I should say. Dairy Fresh Foods. Company that started in Highland Park a long time before I was ever working there. But when I
Detroit.
worked there, it just really crystallized so much about food in class.
Mhm.
So I would look at my bill and I would just kind of know the type of neighborhoods I'm going to just by like what was, especially the types of cheeses. Like I didn't even know these types of cheeses exist. Like
Easy.
these like
So
very expensive
crazy.
cheeses that'll be like, it'll be like a roll of cheese like this.
Mhm.
And one roll would, we as the people that are wholesaling it, would be wholesaling like a roll like a cheese like this for like $200,
Mm.
right? And then when I would have, you know, like 400 cases of like jug juices and pork grinds and, you know,
The jug juice is the color, the purple,
yes,
red, and blue.
jug juices. I knew where I was going. It's like you
Oh
could
my
I kinda
god.
could
Oh, I hate
tell
that.
just by the way things were stocked.
Now what in the world? That's crazy.
And I would know because 'cause I'm delivering dairy, I also would just travel through so many, of the produce sections because oftentimes, like, sometimes they're so close. It would be so interesting just learning so much about a city through the lens of delivering food that I learned, and I wasn't necessarily trying to learn this stuff, but by happenstance, I learned it and learned
Mhm.
all of these, like, very high-end markets that are, definitely like deep east suburbs, deep west
Mhm.
suburbs, even small towns throughout Michigan, small towns throughout Ohio, just picking up on what would be stocked and how these foods will be stocked, and back to that access of a lot of what led to shout out to Detroit Black Community Food Sovereignty Network and what they've
Yeah.
done in the work against food deserts and the whole concept of what was uplifted about food
To
deserts and
be a
food
member of
sovereignty.
that organization, just
Yeah.
$10 a year, I think it is.
Hey,
And then,
definitely.
what is it? Detroit Food People's Co-op is like
Yes.
$100 a year.
Mhm.
Buy into it and support that movement. Yeah, for sure.
So, that lens, as you talk about access,
Mhm.
that becomes so deep, but also the consciousness to get there is the other part of it. So now you're kinda, like, working across the board, and you're, like, driven, and I like your
I'm
attitude
like,
of,
I done seen too much,
"I'm
you
gonna
know?
change it."
Yeah, it was in Brazil, right? I saw that. My sisters, me and my sister would travel a little bit, and, so we went to, Spain.
Mm,
We went to, where else did we go? Paris.
mm,
Um, and there might have been one other spot, but every place that I went, when I saw people of color, by and large, I saw them on the streets hustling,
mm.
And it was like it was same thing in Brazil. Like, this just can't be, and then I went back to the school setting, I'm teaching these lessons, and I'm seeing the kids, and they have the earbuds in their ears, and they cussing, and they fighting, and squandering the only real opportunity that they have to be able to rise to a higher social economic status, which is their education.
Mhm.
And, I was like, they're walking around, they have no idea. And so I'm like, I would really love to be a part of something that, elevated their consciousness, their awareness of what's possible in the world for them and help position them, to not only be better for themselves and their family, but the community as a whole. And that is how I ended up going into, the work that I did at Detroit Pal, and then now, leading Life Leaders, as the executive director. It's going on 2 years now that I've been there.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you. And, it really is, kinda coming full circle and giving me the opportunity to do exactly what I wanted to do to help young people. Life stands for leadership fueled by entrepreneurism. That's the building of you. It was founded by Amy Niederlander and Michaela Murphy, and just dynamic. They have a great group of dynamic people on our board that are very supportive and just care about kids and want to stop opportunity from being a privilege. Essentially, helping youth to empower themselves and empower their own futures. And the youth learn about themselves. We use theater games in a really unique curriculum that's designed to help them to build soft skills that are transferable in nature and that they can use in any field they choose to go into. And they do choose whether they want to do college or skilled trades or entrepreneurship or just go straight into the workforce. We help to align them to opportunities, resources that exist in the city already, whether it's another youth organization that's gonna serve them better, or compound what we've given them, or whether it's, connection to a corporation that's aligned to the industry that they're interested in, or whether it's connecting them with scholarship resources so that they can afford their education and not go into debt or have the tools to be able to control that for them, for their life and their economic future. We are aligning them to those resources. We're positioned in the Build Institute, which is an organization that's a incubator for small businesses and entrepreneurs. So when we get our kids that
I'm
are
part of
like,
Bill. Shout out Bill. We
"Yes, shout
love
out to
Bill.
Build," when we get kids that are like, like some of the young ladies in our most recent cohort that wanted to do hair. They like, "I don't wanna go to college. I wanna start working. I wanna get a booth. I wanna do this and that and make money." And I'm like, "Okay, well, let's look at the highest level of attainment that you can achieve in that area, and how can you, not just be self-employed, but be a business owner and think about scaling and consider all the different factors, that you need to consider in terms of, market saturation and what's your unique, value proposition and, all the things that I got
All
from
right, 1 second.
college.
We talking NBA stuff.
Look
So let
here,
me
this
let me
MBA coming
let
out
me
right
let me let me
now.
break let me break some of this down because people are like, what are they talking about?
Okay.
Okay, so first off, market saturation. You all know what you all have seen. Market saturation basically means that you got a product, but everybody got that product too. So when everybody has a product, it can be oversaturated, which will devalue what your offering is. So I guess something similar to that would be, well, something of recent. Um, right now, everybody's selling Lions t-shirts, right? So the first person that hit the market with that Lions t-shirt, we run the North, guess what? That product's exponentially worth more. But now that you can almost go to every corner and get those We Run the North shirts, market's more saturated, and you're gonna get the whole concept of the guy down the street selling it for 10. I'm gonna just go to him. And you can make your decision on what you want to do there. But
Mhm.
this is the concept of market saturation, which now comes that whole concept that you also uplifted, value proposition. Your value proposition is basically telling that same person that's like, yo, I'm about to go down the street and get it for $10. It's like, but this is the value proposition. I'm the only person with this shirt with this design, and I only got 4 left, and I only printed 5. So now you just gave the whole concept of, here go another economic one, scarcity.
Mhm.
And you gave more value through that whole concept of scarcity. I would just like to
Mhm.
throw that jargon out there so people
Mhm.
kind of know and, my business teachings. So,
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. So thank you for schooling us on that, breaking it down because they need to know, right? And they also need to know that it is possible. But if they don't see or are not exposed to what the higher levels are, if they don't understand, it's more than just you delivering a service. You also want to know how to manage people so you can activate them and be able to leverage other people's time in a business. Like, those are the type of high level leadership skills that we are instilling in the young people at Life Leaders.
mm,
So, we teach them about their history, the history of the city of Detroit, and how that manifests into what they see present day in their communities and in their neighborhood. And then from there, what's happening now? What opportunities are available now that they can be um, involved in right now, being the change that they want to see, not later, but as young people. We do park cleanups, we do put them at the seat, we sit them at the table.
mm,
We just had a conversation with a group from the I-375 project, and our kids were the first and only kids that they had ever consulted with, but it brought such a rich, new, fresh energy to the space, and for those, team leads who have been talking with a lot of, um, seasoned older Detroiters who have one perspective,
mm,
and they have their experience that they're drawing from that gives them a little, whatever type of, uh, uh chip on their shoulder or whatever they come in with is because of their experience. Well, the kids haven't had that experience. They kind of more fresh, right? We give them the history too, so they understand what um what we're coming out of, but they also have a fresh idea of what could be,
mm.
right? And so it's just great to have them in those spaces and where they can see that their contribution to this conversation is gonna manifest into decisions that are being made that are gonna affect them and their future, right? So no decision should be made for them without them, and their perspective. So those are the kind of experiences that youth are getting, at Life Leaders.
All right, so that naturally leads to like parents watching this saying like, "I want my kid to sign up." What's the criteria? How does a kid get in it? How do you get access to it?
Yes. So, I think demand is definitely there. We have we're in a growth phase, right?
Mm,
We're starting to scale and build out, and getting a lot more support, from across different industries. But right now, how they get involved? Grow Detroit's young talent, so they can go in, apply for the city's summer job.
so no longer do you need to be a police cadet because that Grow Detroit Young Talent is the summer program connected to the Black grants that can connect.
Mhm.
So in the summer,
Mhm.
and no offense to police cadets, it gave somebody some money. I'm just messing. But I could get something else. I could get over here to Life Leaders now too.
Mhm. Yeah, so that brings me to the point, they our kids get paid, right?
Mm,
They get paid because they ask to be paid, because they need to be paid, because most of them are coming from more, lower socioeconomic situations, or they come from Alice households where
and also this, all my networking business people, it's hard to present ideas of business and doing things like an executive without the transaction of money happening. I just want to always uplift it because
yeah.
you'll get offered a lot of that stuff. And then it'll be in the back of your mind. I know it's always in the back of my mind when people are always talking about, let's do real business. Let's meet. And it's like, okay, where the money at?
Yes, and the kids, and young people, we call them emerging adults,
Mhm.
they are making decisions, choices. Where am I gonna spend my time? How am I gonna spend my summer? Am I gonna spend it working at McDonald's or Taco Bell or Gordon's Food Service, where I can make some money? Or am I gonna go and get these high level executive skills that are gonna propel me
Mhm.
into my future, to a better future, right? And we wanna take the guesswork out of that for them and remove those barriers and make it, possible for them to make the choice to invest in themselves. And so thankfully we're able to partner with Connect Detroit and Grow Detroit's Young Talent to pay the young people to get these skills. And it really, really is. I'm just honored to be a part of this opportunity to expose young people in this way. And I'm gonna do it as long as I can. I say I'm here because I'm meant to be here,
Yeah, I was
and
gonna
I'm
say
gonna keep on rocking it out as
you've
long as I
definitely,
can.
I would say from now knowing more about your backstory, it's like
Yeah,
you were that kid.
I was
So
that kid.
so beyond being that kid and learning so much more about it and then being inside schools and understanding those dynamics,
Mhm,
I mean, to me, it's a natural maturation, natural
mhm.
fit.
And
And
then we're gonna be serving kids in the schools too. So we're
hmm,
starting to expand.
okay.
So principals out there, if you want us to come, let me know. Reach out, Maria.Franklin@fueledbylife.org. Email me, reach out on our website, www.fueled.org, fueledbylife.org, I'm sorry. And let's talk because we're coming every single school if you want us
Okay.
there.
Well, say less. You're gonna be in my
Okay.
alma mater. I'm gonna call my principal Rogers
That's
shortly.
right. That's
Be like,
right.
hey, what you got? She need me to hit her up anyway.
That's
Cause
right.
we need to rap. So you already in one. I can guarantee you that. My NO Colts. Know the Colt Nation is
Let's
it's a
go.
different type of
Let's go.
energy over there with them kids. Some life leaders gonna be like, I want to be Big Meech. I'm just gonna challenge you. I like that term, challenge.
Yeah.
Um, so with that, we get to a close. Classic Detroit is different questions. This has been so much fun. Um, very first car, year, make, and model, year you got it.
Oh shoot. What was that car? It was a little red car. It was a foreign car too.
Hmm.
I remember that because I was like, I'm gonna pay for the stuff when it breaks. I don't remember the name of the little car. It wasn't an Escort. It wasn't that was not foreign. I
Nope.
don't remember the car, sorry.
See, there we go. And that naturally, see, you was just
Do people
working.
always know the answer?
Yeah.
Dang it.
Your ride is a Detroit thing. It's a Detroit thing.
What's the name of that car? My sister's gonna be like, she knows what it was, or my
Mhm.
mom. Oh, well.
All right.
Sorry.
So,
That
and
was
then
my little baby too.
what was the name then
I
at
don't
least? What did
remember
you name
yet.
your car?
I don't know what I named it, but I started driving when I was 16. Yep.
And naturally, it's the next question, but I think you probably already answered this. Where's the first place you went when you got it?
When I got my car,
Mhm.
home. I don't
Okay.
know.
I
I wasn't anywhere but home.
I'd
Home,
imagine
maybe the
probably work.
mall,
Okay.
work,
Okay.
school. I was driving myself to school. Oh,
You
I was, you couldn't tell me nothing driving into
everywhere.
that parking lot at Cass.
There you go. The old
Look,
Cass parking lot for
the old
students.
pickle factory.
Ah
That's
man.
right.
Oh man. The if Gretchen Whitmer would have seen those roads, I'm just the student parking lot at Cass Tech back in the day had some epic potholes. It was a learning experience for all of the Cass Tech drivers. So, all right, you're the DJ at the end of the fireworks. You get to play two songs, Woodward and Jefferson. What songs you playing?
Um, Dang it. I'm gonna play Bigger,
Mhm.
Beyonce.
Okay.
And I picked something good. Um, I don't know. Shoot, I'm gonna play. Nowadays, I've been listening to worship music, so
There we
something
go.
worship.
All right, what song you playing? We like
um,
worship.
I don't know. Tasha Cobb's. I don't know something Tasha Cobb's.
Okay. All right.
I'll play Break Every Chain.
I like it. There
Yeah.
we go. Okay. 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 I feel the vibes.
Yes.
Last question. You could rename Woodward after one Detroiter. Who would it be and why?
After one Detroiter, Woodward.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm. Mm, I'm not gonna. Who would I name it after? Only person that came to mind was Lisa Phillips
Wow.
because, she's always she's all so in terms of youth, development, she always, asks for the best and highest the highest and best for the kids,
Hmm.
you know? Part of the reason why and where I got the thought to always create executive exposures for young people was from her, because I know when, uh the Illages came and they were trying to build, Little Caesars Arena, and they came to her and they wanted her support, as a, influential person in the community right outside of their new building, and they were like, "Well, what do you want?" And she was like, "I want executive level exposures for our kids."
Hmm.
And she said, she's like, "They're being trained, they're ready, and we want them to have internships." And to this day, they still do. And so, you gotta ask for what you want.
There you go.
Yeah.
So the lesson within it, shout out to Lisa Phillips. I like it. I
On my
like it.
board too.
All right. See, there you go. There you go.
Yep.
All right. With that being said, this was so much fun. I definitely don't think this will be the end of some of the relationship between what we gonna do here with Detroit is different. We're gonna get some more creativity. Thank you.
Definitely not the last.
Peace.
Peace.
Detroit is Different is where you get information, artistry, history, music, and even comedy. Detroit is Different, a home for the culture of Detroit. Visit online at DetroitisDifferent.com today.